Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for Introduction to Inkscape for Making Stickers with Technocopia. Please note this class is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel for you to refer back to if needed. During this class, Norella will teach us how to use Inkscape, a software, admit this person, that allows you to turn images into vectors and create original graphics. Once you learn Inkscape, you will be able to design a sticker which can be submitted through the form in the chat. I'll also email it to you after as well. The library will cut your sticker for free on our vinyl cutter, and a librarian will notify you when your sticker is ready for pickup. If you were unable to download Inkscape to your computer, you can always come to the main library and use the software on our public computers. If you have questions throughout, feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat, which I will monitor throughout the class. And finally, welcome Norella.
Hi, sorry, I was muted. Hello, thanks for trying this Inkscape class. I hope that we can get you guys a little bit more familiar with getting vinyl stickers cut by the library. I'm gonna start a little bit with I assume you guys have all used Zoom before, but I would ask that everybody just open up the chat if you're on a computer, as long as you can see the chat and the videos side by side, just because I may ask a few questions, and you can use the chat to basically tell me without having to unmute and speak and all that stuff. And then we'll also do some screen sharing later on if we need to, which I definitely expect that we will. So first thing I'm going to go over is basically some examples of different kinds of stickers, and kind of show you what the vinyl cutter is capable of doing and what it's not capable of doing. Just because I feel like if you start with your understanding of the machine, you'll be able to make your learning style suited for that machine, basically. And you'll also keep your ideas and your designs appropriate for that machine. So a big issue that can happen sometimes if you don't know what kind of stickers work best for vinyl cutters is you just start going with designs that have elements that might be a little bit too complicated, or a little bit too much of a tight fit for the vinyl cutter. So I'm going to go ahead and share one of my screens just to show you guys some quick examples and show you some different types of vinyl cutters so you can really get an idea of what it is that you're going to be working with. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. Okay, so everybody should see something that says keep life simple right here. So I'm going to go through real quick and just show you guys some brief examples. So this is just a regular sticker. You might have seen this maybe on somebody's laptop or on the back of somebody's phone. This is another example. So pretty much single color. And if you look closely, you can actually notice that pretty much this whole shape is actually one solid piece. If you look closely, you'll notice obviously the eyebrow and the eye is separated, but for the most part, everything is connected. That's not a requirement for the vinyl cutter, but it's something to keep in mind that if your designs aren't overlapping and joined together, they're going to come off as separate pieces and you're going to have to work with alignment. So I'm going to keep flipping through. This is, of course, very common. I'm sure you guys have seen stencils outside of businesses with the time, with the name. That's a vinyl sticker. It's probably a permanent vinyl, which the library may or may not have. It's very common to have semi-permanent or temporary. I don't know if you guys know which one you guys have.
We're just going to be going with the permanent for this class.
Got it. Okay. Cool. So yeah, so basically permanent, I mean, technically you can remove it if you need to. It's just not that you just can't reapply it over and over into different places. So I'm gonna still show you guys some more examples once I get my computer up, but basically think regular stickers, but just stickers that are single color. So we're not thinking of stickers that basically have a range of colors. Those are basically printed on sticker paper and then cut out. You can cut those out in a complex shape, but probably you've seen images printed out on sticker paper, you know, cut out in a circle or a square or a rectangle or a triangle or something like that. So for this class and for this activity, I want you guys to think more of like a silhouette or a solid shape. So or text. So basically something that if it's one color, it still makes sense visually. So you don't want to just have just let's say like a blob that's all one color, and there might be details inside, but because your vinyl is one color, they don't really make sense. So I'm going to have you guys keep that in mind, and I'm going to jump into a little bit about the program. I know it might seem a little strange to kind of learn about this program without actually having opened it, but bear with me while I figure all my tech issues out. And for now, I just kind of want you guys to take a look at the screen. And I'm actually zooming in on my end. I don't know if you guys can see me zooming in or not, or if it looks the same this whole time.
We can see you zoom.
Nice. Okay, cool. So Inkscape is basically a regular drawing program, except the difference is when you download an image off the internet, like for example, this screenshot is made of different pixels. So if I zoom in enough, it's eventually going to get really blurry where all of these edges are, and it's not a path. So the way that the vinyl cutter thinks is it thinks in lines. So the way that you want to think as you work with this drawing program, even though this drawing program can do anything, it can do graphic design, you could even illustrate, you can make posters. I want you to think more so, I'm creating a path that the vinyl cutter is going to cut the vinyl on. I know it sounds kind of basic to break it down like that, but a vinyl cutter is basically just a cutting tool that follows your lead, basically, on that roll of vinyl. So all we need to decide is what path are we taking the vinyl on? So for example, if you look at shapes, you see that those are solid. You see there's some transparency going on and you can see through them. None of that really matters with the vinyl cutter. The vinyl cutter just sees the outline of a shape. So if you feel like maybe I might be talking about this kind of too simplistically, I ask that you really try to absorb what I'm saying, because once you lock down this understanding, there's a lot of common mistakes that you avoid later on in the actual design process, because your brain is your mind's already calibrated to think, okay, if I'm going to have two lines that cross over each other, then that means that the cutting path is going to cross over each other. If the cutting crosses and overlaps, then it's just going to break it apart into multiple pieces. That may be the effect that you want, or you may want it to stay solid. If so, you never really want lines crossing over each other perpendicularly. So take a look at this line right here. As I'm zooming in, you can see that there's these three squares, one at the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end. Those are called nodes. So those are, the way I like to think about nodes is they're basically corners. So they're kind of like points along the path that might alter the direction that your path is going to go on. So with Inkscape, you're basically going to learn how to manipulate nodes and paths to create the shape that you want. There are other easier ways to create shapes in Inkscape. For example, I'm going to quickly just fast forward to a different screen. And I'm going to show you guys this. So I don't know how many of you consider yourself an illustrator. I don't consider myself an illustrator, even though I have to use illustrations a lot, not really a natural drawer. I can draw from reference, but not really from my head. So I use something called trace bitmap. It's basically, you're taking the regular image, like this image of the cat that I've imported, and you're turning it into kind of like a positive negative image. So either it's white or either it's black. So either it's filled in or it's not. So for example, if I take this image of this cat right here, and of course, I'm not going to go through these action steps at the top left. Those we can go through once I can open up Inkscape, and hopefully we can try to go through it together. And I'll give you guys access to this document so you can reference back to it on how to get to that point. By the way, it looks like my computer is booting up right now, so hopefully that'll come back soon. But what I want you to look at, and I don't want you to focus too much on the details, but this trace bitmap control page here. So brightness cutoff, where you see that purple arrow pointing to, brightness cutoff, the way I understand it is basically it's saying whatever level this brightness threshold is, that's what's going to be detected. So in this instance, the higher that threshold is, the the less black there's going to be in your image, because even the super light colors are going to be detected, like the inside of the ear or the light brown. If your brightness threshold is if it's really low, you're going to see pretty minor pieces detected. You're going to see the darkest of the dark of that image. So obviously in this case, that's the eyes, that's those dark brown lines. But what that creates is it's going to create tiny little minuscule stickers. And that may not be really what you want. If you go higher on the brightness threshold, it's going to pretty much, if it's not white, it's going to think that it's black pretty much for the most part. So it's going to pick up even the lightest colors. Even if you look at that paw on the right-hand side, you see how it's almost non-existent. It's like a pale peach. It's still managed to show up. Not all the way, but it's still managed to show up quite a bit there. So if you increase that brightness threshold, you're going to get higher detection, and you're going to get a sticker that looks more like this. And depending on what your initial image is, this may work or this may not. But, and this is just kind of just an example. This isn't necessarily like a rule that you have to follow. It doesn't have to be the medium number that's the best number. And quite literally, if you look at this, it's not really going to make a great sticker, because if you look above the eyes, you see tiny little pieces that aren't connected. So that's a lot of weeding, like Jen said. And that's a lot of work of like transferring from sticker to where it's going to go. You want a sticker that pretty much comes off in one piece, or if it's 2 or 3 pieces, they're intentional. So the great thing about Trace Bitmap is that it does that work for you. So you don't really have to manipulate those lines, and you're pretty much just taking an image, running it through this function right here, and it will automatically create basically an illustration, a vectorized illustration. So I'm actually going to try to bounce back into this meeting. So let me see if I can get in real quick and get right back to where we were.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Okay, we're back. Let me leave this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my slideshow that I want to show you guys and go back to those examples of some of those stickers and talk about what are some of the examples that you guys should be able to work on once this class is done. So you can kind of get your brain thinking, okay, do I want a visual? Do I want an image? Do I want a name? If I want a name, do I want individual block letters, or do I want script that's all connected and all going to be one piece? All right, give me 1 second, pull that up. Okay. Okay. Can everybody see this page that says keep life simple? Just let me know in the chat.
Yes, we can.
Or you could just let me know. Okay, great, thanks. All right. So I think we finished at this example right here, and I want to show another one. So this one is a large sticker that this person is using what's left of this. So they've cut out this design of this bee or moth. They've pulled out the sticker and it's left this imprint right here. So screen printing. So there are multiple ways that you can use your sticker. You can use your sticker purely as decoration, but you're going to be handed a sticker that has the image. So going back to this, that has the image that you put on it, but it should have a little bit of negative space because it's going to be cut out either in a circle or probably a square or some kind of rectangle. So you can decide, do I want to remove the backing and leave the inside sticker, or do I want to remove the inside sticker and then use that backing, that negative of my drawing, and make a stencil out of it or something like that. So right now, it looks like we've got a few people in class. I'm curious to know, does anybody currently at this time have Inkscape downloaded on your computer? Let me know in the chat if anybody has Inkscape currently downloaded on your computer. Okay, one. Okay, great. Awesome. So the way that we're going to do this class, especially since I burned through a bunch of time already, is I'm pretty much just going to give you guys an idea of what it's like to design. And I want you to try to follow along, and I'll give you some instructions on how to share your screen with me so that I can see what it is that you're working on. So if you have Inkscape, go ahead and download it. If you don't worry about it, because as Jen said, this class is going to be recorded. So you'll be able to access it afterwards and kind of review the information at your own time. But if you don't have Inkscape, I recommend that while we're going through this, ask questions. Like if you have a question, oh, you know, if I hover over this button, can I move these things around? Feel free to still ask questions. So if you have Inkscape, I'm going to have you guys open it. And I'm going to go ahead and assume that you guys have already opened Inkscape before on your computer, but if you haven't, you'll probably have to go through some like basic setup questions. Let me know if you encounter any of those. And Jen, while people are opening up their Inkscape and kind of getting their blank new document, can we go over 7:30 p.m. or is it a hard limit at 7:30?
Well, we go to 8.
Okay, got it.
6:30 to 8.
Okay. All right. I think we still have an hour, so I think we should be able to cover a lot of this.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and like I said, keep that chat handy. The way that I like to set up my computer is I like Inkscape to pretty much take up as much as possible, obviously, of my screen. You want to make sure that it's expanded. And then I'm going to have you guys put the chat just off to the side if you can. And I'm going to share my screen every once in a while. So when I share my screen, obviously I recommend that you're looking right at the screen and kind of following along what I'm doing. Do your best. We discussed, you know, it's not ideal not having two computers and being able to look and do at the same time. So do your best toggling back and forth. I'll try to make time for that as well, so I'm not going too fast. And let me know if you have any questions about what I just went over. Obviously with the virtual class, it's a little harder for me to know how everybody's doing. So definitely let me know. Okay. So I'm going to go back to this and give you a little bit more information. So I showed you this stencil example. I'm going to show you a quick laser cutting example. So the cool thing about Inkscape is once you get familiar designing on Inkscape, you can use different machines. Obviously, the library is giving you access to their vinyl cutter. If you decide you love working with Inkscape or you're interested and you want to take it to the next level, you can access other machines at Technocopia. Obviously, we've got the laser cutter. It's pretty much my main obsession at this point. And the cool thing about Inkscape is you only have to make your design once. As long as it's compatible with cutting styles, you can cut it out of vinyl, out of wood, out of acrylic. So you can take that design and turn it into a logo and just use it digitally. You can pretty much do whatever you want. Here's an example of a design that was created on Inkscape that was used to create a pretty cool business card. Obviously, this is a combination of a couple different things, a cutting machine that's cutting that card stock, and probably a letter press that's imprinting that slow wear letter on there. Another example of home decor that's made using a vector program like Inkscape. Okay, I'm going to go through, remember how I showed you guys this? How you can make images, make them into vectorized paths, basically. So I'm going to show you guys my quick shortcuts on finding stuff like this. And I'm actually just going to show you a quick example. So I love using terms like silhouette of. So silhouette of a fruit bowl. I know I used this example last time. Silhouette of fruit bowl. So you see what's coming out, right? It's looking a lot like those sticker examples that I showed you. If I just search fruit bowl, the laser's not really going to know what to do with this. And the reason is, if you look closely, this is what I was talking, sorry. If you look closely, this is what I was talking about with those lasers. I mean, with those pixels. So painting with pixels, right? So if I take any image, like an image just like this, open it. Probably going to take me to something that's not what I want. Okay. If I zoom in on this, if I zoom in far enough, I'm eventually going to be met with some pixels. So basically there's no hard edges on this to give information to the vinyl cutter. So a regular image, like a photograph, even if it's done with a really high quality camera, it's still not going to create those tool paths, those lines. So regardless of where you get your image, you're going to have to vectorize it. And drawing with vectors is pretty much the whole premise of prepping your design. So drawing with vectors, if you look at this image here, it's got an outline. That's our path. There's multiple words for the same kinds of things. And that's mostly, I interchange those words just to appeal to different people. So if outline means something, it makes you think of something different, then hopefully path will get you more on the path of what it is that we're talking about. So if you look at this purple line, you see these kind of points right here. Those are nodes. They tell that path, okay, you're going to keep going and then you're going to turn, you're going to meet another node, and then you're going to do something different. I like to think of them as corners. If you look at the magnifying glass right here, there's a major difference if you zoom in. If you zoom in on an image with pixels, it's going to eventually show you those individual pixels. And because there's no hard line, the laser cutter isn't going to understand that. It's not going to read that. If you look at this one, even though it's zoomed in, there's always going to be a straight line. So the cool thing about vectors, if you haven't already realized it, is they are expandable. They can be resized infinitely. If you are at all nerdy about math or geometry, I'm not going to go too far into this, but the cool thing about vectors is they're basically math equations. So think of a grid, right? You've got like your X and Y axis. With a vector, you're basically telling the computer, put a point, you know, in X5, Y5, and then stretch it out to X6, Y6. That's basically how the program is made up. You might just be clicking the screen and dragging a line and actually kind of drawing and manipulating your image. But the way the information is stored, the way the image is stored is through numbers and through mathematics. The best thing about this is to remember is just this means you can do anything with your image. You can take a tiny image of a fruit bowl, vectorize it, and expand it and make it 12 feet by 12 feet if you wanted to, without compromising quality of the design at all. I put this example here just in case what I said didn't quite hit right. This is basically what we're doing with Inkscape. So with Inkscape, we are finding our design. Let's say we want to do a flower, and we are creating an outline of our design. Okay, so we've got Inkscape opened up. We've gone through this. I've explained kind of what a line is, what a path is, what nodes do, right? And I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of information about Inkscape now. So I'm actually going to open up Inkscape. Okay. And I'm going to put my chat right down here. I'm going to put this right down here. Okay. So if you don't have Inkscape, just look. If you do have Inkscape, maybe consider toggling back and forth or doing a split screen situation where you can see my screen, but you can also work on your screen. So first thing I want you to know, do not be intimidated by this. I am going to show you what you need to know in order to design stickers. And anything I don't talk about, you pretty much don't need to know. It's for other functions that aren't relevant, basically for this. So first thing I want you to know is the left-hand side is basically your toolbox.
Narella,
Okay?
I think you have to stop your screen share and then redo it so that way we can see your Inkscape, because right now all we're seeing is the Google Docs.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's try that again. Okay.
There, that's it.
So left-hand side, this is that toolbox I was talking about. So I'm going to show you guys, this is basically your selection tool. So right now I don't have anything on the screen, but if I did, I would want to click my select tool and I would create a bounding box around whatever it is that I wanted to select. So basically I'm clicking and I'm dragging. Now, some other things around here, this is a different kind of selection tool. This is basically you selecting those corners or those points on your illustrations. This is selecting everything. I like to call this the big select and I call this the little select. It's just something I do in my mind. And maybe if it helps you, you can think about it like that too. Down here, we have some shape creation tools. So you can click this and you can just make yourself a square. This square has no fill, which means it has no filling basically, and it only has an outline. Real quick, I'm going to take you to Object, Fill, and Stroke. This is where you can alter the design of your shape. So I'm just going to make my fill any color, just so there's something there that you guys can see. Okay, I was trying to understand why it was gray. There we go. And then for my stroke, so remember how I said there's multiple terms for different things? So you know how I called it an outline and a path? So it's also called your stroke, basically. So whatever your pattern is that's along the outside, that's what your stroke means. So for this one, I'm going to do a solid color. And I'm just waiting for that to update. There we go. Okay. So fill is the inside of your shape and stroke paint is the color of the outside. Stroke style is what is the style of your outline. So obviously I have dashes selected here, but I'm going to go ahead and make it a solid line. And that's a solid line right there. Really don't like this color scheme, so I'm just going to go ahead and change it just a little bit to be a little bit more soothing. And I'm showing you pretty much you can change everything basically on your shape. Okay, we're backing out of that. So I've created a square. Regardless if this is purple, red, green, whatever color the stroke is, regardless, the vinyl cutter is only going to see a square. So the color of your design is going to be the color of the vinyl that the library has. And they'll let you know what their colors are. It's pretty much just the same colors that Technocopia has. And whatever it is, you need to understand that your sticker is going to be all that one color. Okay. Below the shape maker tools, we have some drawing tools. So the only thing I use here is pretty much this, which is going to help you create curves or straight lines. Think of this like your path maker. So I clicked once and I made a point, and now I have this path that I can drag wherever I want. If I click again, it's going to create another point, and then I'm going to be deciding what I'm going to be doing next. All I'm doing is I'm clicking once really fast. I'm not holding it. I'm not dragging it. I'm just clicking once. If I click, hold, and pull down, I'm going to create something called a Bezier curve. It's basically just a curve. Now I can go ahead and hover over this one and just go ahead and close my shape. So if I put a fill on this shape, the only thing that's going to be filled in is this shape right here and this shape right here. I'll show you what I mean. Let's go to fill, right? Because that's my shape. So, oops. So if I take this shape right here this wacky looking one, and I send this to the vinyl cutter, it's not going to be one connected shape, even though the software thinks that this is all one shape, because there's this crossing that happens, this crossover here. So everywhere where you see this stroke or this outline, that vinyl is going to get cut. So basically you've got two shapes, two separate shapes that happen to just be touching on one corner. That's how the vinyl cutter is going to read this. And you, like I said, you can use that to your advantage or not. Okay, so I've showed you a little bit about how to create shapes using some of the shapes that are already available to you, such as the square. You can make rectangles, different kinds of polygons, circles. And I've also shown you how to play a little bit with this path right here. I'm going to show you something a little bit more useful, in my opinion, and pretty much same level difficulty. I'm going to show you how to write something out. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unselect everything that I have. So the way that I do that is I just click on the white space and I'm going to write out my name. So I'm going to go ahead and click this A right here. And I'm going to click once on the white space and I'm going to write out my name. And of course, it's really small. So I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to increase the size. I'm going to go ahead and make it 64. So that wasn't that big. Go ahead and make it 144. Okay. Now it really doesn't matter what size I make it because I can expand it later on.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So you actually typed your name on the keyboard?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Great question. So I clicked this text tool. I clicked once on the white space. You see that blinking cursor, and then I hop over to my keyboard and I write whatever it is that I want to write. So I'm glad that you pointed that out because I'm sure all of you have written text documents or Word documents or emails. So the same way that that text works is the same way that this text works until you change it from text to a shape. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So if I click this, if I double click this, I'm going to start to have those same functions that I have with regular text. I can highlight letters, I can delete them, I can make spaces, right? It's very familiar to us. Depending on what program the library uses, or really anybody uses, your vinyl cutter may be able to kind of create a shape based off of text alone, but I'm going to show you how to do it the right way, which is basically taking text and turning it into a shape and making sure that it's vectorized prior to sending it to the library, because that's going to make your librarian's life a lot easier too, is for your design to be ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to go back in with my big select. I'm going to select my name and I'm going to turn it into a path. So instead of this being one line, like if I were to write this word out, I would put my pencil here, I would go up, down, up, right? So there's one line going through it. I want to make this a shape, kind of like a bubble letter. So I want there to be a path on the outside outlining all of this, because that's the only thing that's going to make this cut out the way that I want it to cut out. I don't want just one slice of an N on the vinyl. I want like the bubble letter version of this N to cut out so I can pull that whole sticker out. So I'm going to do object to path. So what I did is I selected my name. I hit path, object to path. Now, if you unselect, so anytime I ever feel like the selection tool is giving me issues or I can't select what I want to select, I always just click on the empty part in the back, just to kind of unselect everything and start over. And now if you start to click around, you should start to see that you have separate shapes. But how do I make sure? So the way that I make sure that what I've done is create a shape is I'm going to remove the filling on the inside and just put a stroke on this, because I want to see what is the path that the vinyl is going to take. So I'm going to go to fill and I'm going to do no fill. which is going to remove it completely. Then I'm going to go to stroke and I'm going to add a solid stroke right there. So actually just noticed we got something in the chat box. So let me read that. If you highlight the text and then make it a shape, does the highlighting become part of the shape like a box around it? No, it doesn't. That's a good question too. So let's review again. How did I get from here to here? Did I really change anything? Not really. The laser, the vinyl cutter is going to see these things the same way, whether or not I formatted the fill and the stroke differently. What I just did is just for me to visualize what is the path. I can't see the path here because I don't know, is there a path inside? Are there issues with this path? I want to be able to see just the outline. I don't have to do it one by one. I can select everything. Here's a tip about selecting in Inkscape. When you're selecting, you want to make sure that you select the whole shape all the way around it. So if I want to select this A, I need to select all of it. If I leave that little tail right there, I'm not going to select it. There are other ways to select it, like clicking, but if you have lots of little things to select, you want to make sure that you get in the habit of going all the way around. It doesn't matter if you're halfway over into the L. It's not going to select the L because you haven't included all of it in there. So I'm going to go like that. And I'm going to select the A. So I'm actually going to back out of that and select everything, not the N that I just worked on. Okay. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to make the fill null. Basically, I'm removing the fill because I don't want to know about it. I just want to know what is the stroke. And I'm actually going to select the N as well. A shortcut for selecting multiples is to, while you have your first selection ready, press the Shift key on your keyboard, hold it down, and select what you'd like to select, and it will add it. So now I have everything selected, and then you can let go of Shift. Another way to do this is just do a bounding box over everything. I'm going to go ahead and make the stroke paint really dark using my color options here. Okay. Now I want to talk about manipulating this. Because you see how close this L is to this A? If you're only going to use the inside of these letters, like if you're just going to use the N-O-R-E-L-A, that's fine. But if you want to create like a stencil out of this and you want to use the negative, you're not going to want this asymmetry here. You're going to want to kind of shape everything nicely. So I'm going to show you how to move things around pretty simply on Inkscape. So let's say I want to move this O. I'm going to click O. And I'm going to use the arrows on my keyboard to move this over. Let's say I want to move these things over a lot. So I'm going to click the R, move it over. I could also select all three and move everything over. But then I still need to fix this. There we go. Okay. So this is cool, but for my sticker, I really don't want 6 separate shapes. Sounds like a pain in the butt. I really want everything to be connected like with a base or with a box or something. So I'm going to show you how to add some flair and then also how to adjust the actual style of your shape. Let's go with adjusting the style of your shape first. So that's where this small select comes in handy. So let's say I want to add some character. Right? So I'm going to click the N and I'm going to zoom in. I just zoom in using the touchpad on my laptop, but you can, let me see if you can zoom in. There should be a shortcut. I'll include it in the materials that we send after class. So let's say I want to add some character.
Well. Sorry, Shift plus.
Sorry, say that again.
Shift plus.
There we go. Yep. Thank you. Shift plus and Shift minus. Very good. Also, if you're using a mouse, it's either Shift or it's Control, and you just use your wheel on your mouse to go in and out as well. Okay, so let's back out. Let's start over. I've selected nothing. I've clicked on the white. I would like to select this N. I'm clicking my small selection tool because I want to work with these individual nodes. When I hover over this node right here, it turns red. It tells me that you're right on top of it and it's selectable. So I'm going to click it once and it turned, I don't know what color this is, this kind of inverted blue yellow color. And I'm going to just click and drag it. Okay. Not really so happy with how that looks. So I'm going to alter it a little bit. So I'm going to double click somewhere on the path to create another corner, just like that. And I'm going to click that and move it over, pretty much back where it was. So now I've created this corner that doesn't interfere with my O. Okay. So what I've shown you how to do here is the very beginnings of node manipulation. So obviously you can use this to draw whatever you want, right? Here's another example of like free drawing. So I'm going to use my drawing tool and I'm going to click and just make a wacky shape. Okay. And then let's say I didn't really quite get it where I wanted. I'm going to click that node selection tool. And I'm going to click and start shifting things around. So you can use this to do whatever you want. I'm just showing you how I apply it to actual text so you can see kind of in practice, how does it work? So I'm going to do that same effect on this bottom line here. I'm going to click and hold. Let's say I don't want to click and hold. Let's say I want a completely straight and parallel point. So I'm going to undo by hitting Command Z. I'm going to just click this node that I want to play with, and I'm just going to use the arrow, because if I use the arrow, it's going to go exactly straight left. It's not going to go up or down at all. Okay. So there's a little bit of manipulation. So the first point of manipulation I could have done is just select a different font, right? Obviously you can write out what it is that you want to write out, your name or your dog's name, select it like you would any font and just go through here and play around with the different fonts and find something that's like what you like. But I showed you this example because you can add character that you can't find in font 1. And it's good to know how to play with these node tools so that you know how to manipulate actual images too. Like if you just find that you want this to be a little bit more curved or you want it to be straighter, I'll show you an example of curved. So let's say I want this corner to be curved. I don't want it to be so sharp. So I'm going to click this. Since I'm already in my node selection tool and I'm in the middle of working it, this panel up here gets changed to all of my kind of secondary tools that are only node related. So basically everything that I can do with this goes right up here. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. I don't worry too much about technicalities personally. For working with a really technical program, I'm a very like easygoing and simplistic learner. I see that this is curved. I'm going to click it. That's how I learned. I just was playing around. So clearly this is telling me that it's going to make it curved. If I click this, it's going to create a sharp corner. And it didn't really do that. I'll probably find out why later. But I'm going to show you now that I've made this curved, how I can manipulate this curve using these handles. So these handles basically reference their own side, right? I don't want to do something like this because once I have lines crossing each other, remember, each one of those lines, the vinyl cutter is going to cut. So if I do that, I'm going to have two separate pieces. So I want to keep it reasonable. And I'm going to move it a little bit because I want it to kind of fit with this curve of this O. So obviously right now, I don't want to get too carried away with design, but you can do whatever you want here. And let's say I want it to be, you know, something like right there, right? So that's some minor manipulation with the node tool that you can easily do, especially if you're just following along right now, or even if you're going to follow along later with this tutorial. Okay. So the other thing that you could do is you can even move your letters around. Let's say you don't want them all together, all lined up nice and straight like that. Let's say you want them you know, some wackiness. Okay. Remember when I said, what if you don't want these separate letters? What if you want them to be all interconnected? Well, you could have selected a different font for one, but there's also some other options. So let's say I want to create a box that kind of combines all of these. So show you an example. I'm going to kind of wing it for a second. So let's say I want to create a little box. That's pretty much exactly what I wanted to do. But what I want to do is I want to create a box and I want to make it really thick. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click my big selection tool. And I know I have my box selected because I see these little arrows right here. I'm going to go ahead into stroke style, which I can access by going into fill and stroke, which is under object. I'm going to have shortcuts for these for you guys to have available when you're playing around. And I'm going to just increase the thickness of this line. So I'm just going to click the plus until, I don't know, this is an example. So basically until I see something that looks like it's going to cover like the tops and bottoms of some of these letters. Now, obviously, because I move my letters around, it's going to be a little bit more difficult. So maybe I change my mind and I'm going to go a little bit back to what we had. There we go. Okay. Okay, I'm going to go back with my square, with my border here, and I'm going to continue to make it thicker. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to cover that all up. Okay, cool. Now, what am I really doing here? You guys are probably like, where's she going with this? So what I want to do is I want to make all of this into one shape, one unified shape. So this connects to this, connects to this. So everything's going to kind of come out all together. So what you're going to end up removing is like this inside cutout right here. Does that make sense? I'm going to try to show you by selecting everything. I'm going to go to path and I'm going to go to union. And that didn't work. So, and I think I know why. So the first thing I'm going to do with this line right here is I'm going to turn this into a shape. I want to know, is Inkscape understanding this as one thick line? Or is it understanding this as two lines, two parallel lines? So is it really kind of like how I had to make those letters bubble letters? Is this a bubble shape or is it just one line, right? I want it to be a bubble shape. So I'm selecting it and I'm going to go to, let's see. I'm going to go to stroke to path. Let me see if that worked and then I'll walk you guys through that. Yeah. Okay, cool. So stroke to path basically means it's going to outline everything. So how do I know that that worked? I'm going to fill and I'm going to get rid of the fill and I'm just going to show the stroke and it should show me two separate lines. I'll show you what I mean by that. Do you guys see what I'm talking about? So if I cut this as a sticker, obviously it's just going to be this border inside here. If I go backwards and undo what I just did, all that's going to happen here, if I run it just like this black thickness right here is just my stroke style. It's not my actual path. My actual path is right alongside this, and it's just going to cut that one line. So I need to turn this from one line with a thick outline to an actual shape. So I'm going to go back to stroke to path. And it looks like nothing changed, but something did change. I'm going to remove the fill. I'm just redoing what I did earlier. And I'm going to place it back where I want it. And I'm going to try that trick again with combining it, basically. I think I'm also going to make it a little bit more narrow and move it down a little bit, just like that. Okay. I'm actually playing with this as if it's actually going to go on the vinyl cutter, but it's not. So I'm going to select everything and I'm going to go to path and union. And I'm going to see if that works. And it did. So I'm going to undo and show you what I just did. So I'm going to select everything. And I'm creating a union. So wherever there is overlap, I'm going to have union. You see what I'm talking about there? It's kind of cool. I didn't think it would actually look like this, but I actually think it looks pretty cool, especially if I had spent more time playing around with some of the character that I was giving these letters. You can pretty much do a lot of stuff as long as you, I mean, even if you can't see this in your mind, even if you go on Google and look up examples and get inspired and kind of think, okay, for example, I'll show you an example. And I know I have to stop sharing and then share my Safari right here. I'll show you a quick example. Okay. Find the sticker. Oh, and I'm in caps. So obviously immediately some of these are those other stickers that I was talking about. Here's a great example. Okay, let's not look at it like that. Okay, so this is a great example because it's script. So obviously there's going to be some connection automatically here once you do union. I'll show you a quick example of how I do that because it's a little bit different. So I'm going to stop sharing and share Inkscape. Okay. Real quick, let's say I want to do script because I know this is going to happen. Okay. Highlight everything. And what I just did there, by the way, is I hit my cursor right here to just start blinking, and then I'm using the arrows on my keyboard to like toggle down, just so I can pretty much breeze through it. Okay, I'm going to go with obviously this one, and I'm going to increase my size a little bit. Okay. So the first thing I have to do is I have to turn it into a shape, right? Because it's a font still. Even though it's selected, it's a font because I can select it like I can a font. I can select the letters individually, so it's not all one shape. So I'm going to select with my big selection tool. I'm going to go to path, object to path, unselect everything, and then double click. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening here. So I'm not clicking, I'm just hovering, and you see that red line that pops over. So that shows me the whole shape. So let's talk about that, right? So let me use my other selection tool. I'm going to start moving them out of the way so you can see they're not connected the way you thought they were, except for some reason the O and the R is. So if I want to see what is the vinyl cutter going to see, remember, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to go back to fill. I'm going to remove it. I'm going to go back to stroke paint. I'm going to make it solid. Look at what's happening. If I send this to the vinyl cutter, it's going to cut through this, right? So it's going to go ahead and cut the O and the R. Actually, this is a great example because the O and the R is the kind of relationship you're looking for, where it's all one shape. And between the R and the E, the L and the A is not what you're looking for. Okay, I feel like we all got that, but how do we fix it? So I'm going to select this. I'm going to click Shift and select the E. I'm going to go to Path Union. Boom. I'm going to select the L. Let's see if I can select both of these individual shapes along with this and just hit Union and see if it'll do it all together. It did. Okay. Can I connect the N? Yes and no. In the example that I showed you online that I just Googled, the first letter was unconnected, but maybe you're like, I want it to be connected and maybe it'll be fine like that. Let's see how it looks. I'm selecting everything and I'm going to go to Union. okay, I could leave it or take it. I'm not a huge fan of the way that that looks, but that's not so bad. Maybe I would like this better if this connection was a little bit smaller. Okay, I'm going to go into my node selection tool and I'm going to select this and I'm going to move it down a little bit. Maybe it'll give me some more separation in my letters, which was, I felt like was better about the option when it wasn't connected. So if I don't keep it connected, I get that real definition in the letters, but I have to deal with separate letters and placing and alignment and all that. The option that I just did, I'm kind of getting a little bit of both, right? I have more definition between the N and the O because I have these nodes that I pushed in. And that's just a visual thing. I just know that as a graphic designer, but you could just have intuition and know that. Or maybe you look at this and you're like, I absolutely hate this. Like I want it to be more separated. I want it to be spaced out. I'd rather have it separated. I don't care. Completely, obviously your choice. But that's a great example because it shows you writing text, taking text, turning it into shape, then taking individual shapes and using the union function to turn them into one shape. That's why it all gets selected when I click it. And then it also shows you manipulation of that shape so you can get the kind of sticker that you want. So anybody have any questions so far on these basic functions, right? We went over these shapes. We went over kind of messing, let me zoom in here. We went over kind of messing with these nodes. And then I just kind of jumped into text because I think it's like a familiar place that most people already understand. But then we also incorporated shapes into these stickers. So I'm going to open the chat just to check to see if anybody has any questions. Okay, no questions yet. Cool. And I'm actually going to stop sharing and go back to my my program where I'm kind of guiding you through everything. So hold on. Let's go to right here. Hold on. Okay, so you guys can see this page, right? It says, what can you do with shapes? So because when my computer died, it died because I was basically running an external screen along with my laptop so I could see both of the screens that I was working with. So I kind of had to pivot and show you it on Inkscape first and now kind of go through and show you what we just talked about. So I'm going to kind of breeze through this. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we just went over this. But I'm going to show you, obviously, we talked about the menu bar. And we talked about object and path, which we've used, and file and edit, pretty basic, just like in a regular document. We've talked about your toolbox, right? We've talked about your selection tool, your shape maker tools, your drawing tools, your text tool. That's pretty much it. I don't use any of this. Honestly, I mean, I can guess like this is the color picker tool. This is the fill tool. This is an eraser. I never use this for any kind of design. That's pretty much what I use is I use the selection, the drawing, the shape, and the drawing tools. Each one of these tools is going to have its own subcategory of extensions and tools, like how when we made a curve on that end, I just used the node selection tool and all of a sudden I got those options. Okay, so I'm going to go through this. And this is a screenshot of the path on the menu bar. It's a slightly different version of Inkscape, which shows me these symbols next to it, which I don't have on my version, maybe because I'm using a Mac, and maybe you do. I find these unbelievably helpful, like irreplaceable, because even if I don't know what the difference is between division, exclusion, and intersection, I'm a visual person, and you probably are too, if you're interested in making stickers. So you can see that you can see what this does. So I'm going to show you a brief example of how to use shapes, simple shapes to make a different shape. I know maybe that doesn't make so much sense. So at this point, if you have Inkscape, I'm going to have you select the shape maker tool. So this white shape right here, I'm sorry, this circle right here. Go to an empty area on your screen. And I'm going to have you just start making a couple circles. Now, for those of you that don't want to do that yet or don't have Inkscape, I'm going to share my Inkscape page and I'm going to walk you through it. Okay. So I'm going to go to a different area. This is a really quick example. I'm just going to create a circle. I want my circle to have light blue fill and no outline. So I'm going to go over to blue. And then I'm going to lighten that a little bit. So I'm clearly working on the stroke, which is not what I want. So I'm going to go to fill and add a fill. Go to stroke. And I'm going to make my stroke black, just so at least I can see it. And I'm going to make my fill light blue. Okay. Now I'm going to show you guys some shortcuts that I use all the time. It's just control and paste. You might already know it. So I'm going to click my circle. I'm going to click Command C and Command V. And I'm going to just make a duplicate, basically. And I'm going to put it right next to it. I'm going to show you how to use these basic functions of scaling your shapes and your any kind of your designs. So once I've selected this shape, I see these arrows. This is going to allow me to either make it longer or wider, or I can do all of that at the same time. I'm going to make it just a little bit bigger, like right there. I'm going to Control C, Control V. So I'm copying and pasting. And I'm going to make that one even bigger. Just a little bit, right? This is the relationship that I'm hoping to have. And I'm going to show you why. I'm going to click that first one because I want another small one. And I'm going to put it over here to the side. Probably like, what the heck is she doing? Okay. I'm going to select all of these shapes. And I'm going to do union. And you see some clouds. I see some clouds. I'm going to make my stroke style really thin so that I can get a better idea of what the line looks like that's actually going to be cut, right? If it's too thick, you don't really know what those corners are really going to look like, because your vinyl cutter is going to be able to cut pretty sharp and very accurate lines. So you want to know really what is this going to look like. The best way to know what this is going to look like is you could just remove the stroke completely. Or you can put the stroke in there, remove the fill, and make the stroke super thin. I just like to fill it in so I can get an idea of what is my final shape going to look like. And that's your cloud. Okay, let's say I want to make a few clouds. Let's say you guys are hooking up Inkscape, and you realize, I think I'm a digital illustrator. Okay, so you created your cloud, you're selecting it and making another copy, right? Select, Control C to copy, or you can go to edit and copy and you can do it the long way, but I'm sure you're going to want to start using these shortcuts eventually. Okay, I'm going to show you how to create some variation with designs. So once you've got one of your cloud sets selected, I'm going to go to Object. We're going to flip horizontal. Bam. It just flipped it a little bit. Let's say it's still looking a little bit too much the same. So I'm just going to change my width and my height a little bit. Okay. Now the library is going to supply you with a 5 by 5 inch sticker. So let's talk about something that I'm really glad that I remembered. Let's talk about automatically scaling your design. So the first thing that you want to do is you just want to make a square that's a 5" by 5" square, so that when you design inside of it, everything that you design is going to be within that spacing. So we already know how to do this. We're going to click this tool right here, create rectangles and squares. You're going to make any size, small, any size. I'm going to go back to select. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to change my units to inches. So right now we're 5.6 by 6 point something. Remove that toolbar. So I'm just going to change it to 5 by 5. Okay. What I'm doing there, if you don't know what I'm doing, is I'm actually triple clicking to highlight it, and then I'm just typing 5, and then I'm clicking outside of it. So now I have this 5 by 5 square, right? So, okay, I made all this stuff and it's way too big. That's okay. My designs are pretty simple, so they can be scaled down. So I'm scaling it down and I'm moving it in. Now, if I had a really complex design that looked really big, once I make it small, it might not make so much sense as a 5 by 5. So I'll show you a quick example of that, which pretty much brings us to like the last example of the class, which is that trace bitmap example, where I took that cat and basically took an image off the internet and just turned it into a sticker. While that is the most satisfying method to make a sticker, or not the most satisfying, but the most instant method, it can also be the most problematic, right? Because this sticker is not really problematic, because all I'm doing is, all the vinyl cutter is doing is it's cutting this shape here, then it's cutting this triangle, then it's cutting this triangle, then this shape, and so on and so forth. And then at the end, it'll cut one all the way around. It's not really cutting ends or O's or R's. It's just cutting these cutout shapes. And, you know, my screen, I pretty much zoomed in far enough to the point where I know on my screen, this square is about 5 inches. And I can take a ruler or even just use my phone. Like I know my phone's about 5 inches. So I can put that on the screen and see, okay, it's a little bit smaller than my phone. So maybe I can zoom in a little bit more. And what I'm doing right now is I'm scaling it like in real life, right? Like I want to know, how big is this sticker going to be and what's it going to look like? Because I want to be able to visualize, okay, I think that these shapes are clean enough and basic enough that the vinyl cutter is going to cut through them. Obviously, if you've never used a vinyl cutter intimately, you don't know that sometimes when these lines are too close to each other, they can cause problems, like the vinyl can tear or not cut through properly. So you want to make sure that you just have clean, crisp designs. I'm going to show you an example of taking an image off the internet and vectorizing it in Inkscape and prepping it to make your design. So I'm going to change my screen share option so that you're looking onto what I'm doing online. Okay, I'm gonna go back to Google. I'm gonna do, remember I had those examples like silhouette of, or black and white image of, or outline of, right? So black and white polar bear. Okay. I'm going to show you guys what to look for when selecting stickers. I'm not going to want to select something that looks like this, right? Because each one of these little lines is going to be detected as a separate shape. There's no way you're going to weed this. I probably don't even want to select this, because this is a separate shape. This is a separate shape. These lines are really thin. It's going to tear when you start to peel it off. So you really need to kind of keep your expectations simple, especially for your first one. This one obviously would make a great sticker because it's one solid shape, but that's not your only choice. Let's talk about this one. Not so bad. If you wanted to, it is a multi-part sticker, right? So you're gonna have this big one and then 1, 2, 3. It could work. It could be done. So maybe black and white polar bear isn't the right search term because I'm not getting a lot that I love. So let's try that. Okay, a little bit better. Let me find one that's not so boring. Like it's not just an outline, but maybe it's something like these ones might be a little bit too complex for a 5x5 sticker. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know that you want to risk it, right? Like all these little details in here, not so sure. It could probably work, but it's a lot of weeding. It's a lot of removing those little pieces. And the more you do that, the more opportunity you have to tear those really thin pieces. Because remember, your sticker is like all connected. Okay. I'm not in love with any of these, so I think I'm going to switch tactics. I think I'm going to do a silhouette of a rose. Okay. Automatically, what doesn't work? That doesn't work, right? There's no way this is going to happen because you just have this very thin line that you're basically dealing with, and you're never gonna be able to peel that off and put it onto something and transfer it really nicely. It's gonna be a pain in the butt. So real quick, I'm just gonna find something that I like. Obviously, any of these solid ones would be fine. I'm gonna go with, let's see. Okay. Let's go with this one. So I just Googled this. This is for a class. I'm not selling what I'm making. So it's totally acceptable for me to use these images. And you can absolutely use it during your learning and your practice, right? So I'm just going to right click and I'm going to hit copy. That's it. And I'm going to switch my screen so that I'm sharing my Inkscape page. Okay. And I'm going to go to a blank area. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to hit paste. Okay, it's huge. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to scale it. Obviously, it's already selected and I see my inches here, 12 by 20. So the only thing I need to do is I need to make the highest measurement a 5. I'm probably going to want to make it less than a 5 because I'm going to want it to be inside that. I'm not going to want it to be right at the edge. So I'm going to make it 4.5. We'll see what that looks like. Okay, so I did something wrong. Before I do that, I'm going to go backwards, Control Z. I'm going to click this lock box, which basically keeps my ratio, right? So now I'm going to redo what I just did and see how it resized my image. So I'm going to drag this over to my square. I know I showed you guys this 5-inch square pretty late in the game, but when you're working on this at home, I recommend make the 5-inch square first so you could just work around it. So I'm going to move my name out of there. Or maybe I am going to keep my name because I'm going to try to fit as much as possible in this so I can get the most out of my vinyl sticker. But I'm still going to try to make it make sense, right? So that means I'm going to want to have this even smaller. So let's say I want it to be 2.5 or 3.5. Okay. Now, if I drag this over, oops, selecting too much. If I drag this over, so actually the image that I selected, I think is a vector file, and I think it imported as a vector. Let me double check. No, it didn't. It just imported with some translucency. Okay, so the reason why I was saying that is because I expected this to have a white background behind it, so for you not to be able to see my name, but there was some translucency there in that file and it transferred over, which is kind of cool. But it still doesn't have nodes. And I know that because I'm clicking my node selection tool and I'm clicking on this and I'm not getting anything. And if I zoom in, I'm probably going to see some pixels. Okay. And those are the pixels I'm talking about. We see a line, but the vinyl cutter really doesn't. So I have to vectorize this first before I start messing around with it further. How am I going to do that? I'm going to go back to the main selection tool. And when you're following along later, or if now, obviously now you can follow along right with me, but if you're doing this later, you can reference that page in those resources where it shows you how to vectorize an image where the 3 pictures of the cat are. So I'm gonna go to path, trace bitmap, and it's gonna come up with this. It's okay if this doesn't mean anything. The first thing that you wanna do is just hit update. And this image is gonna look really low quality for some reason. Don't worry, this is not going to be exact, right? So I just hit update. I just went with what was already here. But if this was, let's say this was higher, let's say it was 0.9. Not much happened, right? So I'm going to hit apply because I like the way that it looks. And I'm going to move it over. They look identical. But when I zoom in, you're going to see a difference. So see how, not sure if your screens can actually catch this using screen share, but you see there's a difference in the edge quality, right? And you don't just have to look for it. You can double click and the nodes will start to show up. I'll show you what I mean by that.
Narella, I just want to let you know there's 5 minutes.
Okay.
Or 4 minutes now.
Got it. Okay. So double click on this. And you'll see all those nodes there. So I'm going to get rid of my original image. I'm going to bring this over. I'm going to click it again, rotate it. We haven't gone over this yet, but it is in those instructions. And I'm going to just position it right there. Maybe I think these nodes are too complex, like they're kind of too small and tight. I'm going to go to path and I'm going to go to simplify. And it simplified my rows a little bit. Now, real quick, I'm going to do kind of an outro, like how to save your design and prep it for cutting at the library. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select all this other stuff that I don't want, right? And I'm going to right click and hit delete. Delete. I'm not sure why it's not doing it on my computer, but it's usually a very simple function. I'm just selecting and I'm deleting, but to avoid crossing over some time, I'm actually just going to move them out of the way and reselect what I want my sticker to be right here. Oh, I've got multiple things selected. That's what it is. Okay. I'm going to select my sticker and I'm going to go to edit and I'm going to go to resize page to selection. So that means that that page that was there, you can see that drop shadow is gone. I'm going to select that border and I'm going to delete it because I don't need the vinyl cutter to cut out that border. Okay. And now that's my shape basically. So if I want to know what this is going to cut out, like I said, I'm going to go to fill and stroke, like how we went over in the beginning. I'm going to nix my fill, add my stroke. You can barely see it. I'm going to increase the thickness so you can see it a little bit more. And that's a little bit too much. Cool. And I can make that bigger if I wanted to. Like, let's say I'm like, okay, I want to fill up some more space. I can expand it some more and use my arrows to move it up and over. And you just created basically a little logo for yourself. So I know we only have 2 minutes left, so I'm gonna ask anybody if they have any questions on anything that I went over.
So to save it, you would just do file, save as, and then we prefer a .svg file, and you can do that right in here, right?
Correct, yeah. So the one thing I haven't done yet is I haven't deleted my other pieces, but let's say your other pieces were deleted. It looks like I was able to do that. Then once you're done and you've resized your page to the selection and you've emptied out everything else, you're just going to hit File, Save As. It'll give you some options here. Just do a regular .svg. I don't really know what the difference is between plain and optimized. I just do a regular .svg. And you can rename it here like Rose logo name. Oops. rose logo name .svg and just hit save. And then
We
you'll
were
be able
unable to
submit
see
that
that
file.
screen that had popped up for the save as, but
Oh, I see. Okay.
yeah, but that's
I'll
okay.
see if I can import that afterwards into those materials.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's as basic as it sounded. It was file save as, and actually I think I can show you real quick. I'm just going to share my screen in a slightly different way. So I'm just going to share my actual desktop. So you should see file save as. You'll see this. You'll see your different kinds of file types right here. I'm just going to save it as an Inkscape SVG. And I named this rose logo name. And I'm just going to hit save. And you should be able to upload it. It's going to tell me it already exists because I just saved it earlier before you guys could see it. But yeah, that is basically it. Sorry about the technical difficulties, but I feel like we got through it anyways. Does anybody have any questions on anything else?
Yeah, I have a question. This is Dot. So the flower, the rose, and your name, is that going to be all? They're not connected, so is that going to be two separate stickers?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to do it that way. I just am showing you different examples basically of what to make, and I just threw it on there together. But
Okay.
you could say, I don't even want that name, and I just want a larger rose, and that's your sticker right there. That would be easier for the library and probably better for you to just stick to one thing pretty much
Right.
for your whole 5 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I will email everybody Norella's tips and tricks maybe tomorrow. Is that doable? Okay, tomorrow, along with the form link, which is also in the chat right now. You could grab it right now if you've already designed and submit that. And then a couple of other links as well, including our survey, which we would love you to take.
Yes, please.
All right, but thank you so much, Norella. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here.
Thanks, guys.